Hey everyone, this is Kat. Now that I've calmed down a bit over the Facebook post, I'd like to take a look at it and rip it apart with a more clear mind. Firstly, they are saying not to be deceived. If you are getting things being posted about the two witnesses in your feed, don't be deceived, yada yada, and basically that they're false um prophets. The problem with this here is that I have actually pointed out false prophets to Washington Jackson before, and he refused to deal with it. So this really is not whatsoever about them being false prophets. I know Washington likes to say that it is about that, but he's lying through his teeth when he says it. There has to be something else going on here because he refuses to deal with anyone else in the community who can be verified as a false prophet. And until You know what? I don't know what the poster's intentions were since this was not Washington Jackson. But I do know that Washington Jackson still influenced this person to post it because it's Washington's page. And Washington will go to any length in order to mandate a shunning of Chanel and Brandt. This isn't about Chanel and Brandt being false prophets. It's about shunning people that you don't like. Secondly, the poster decided to go with the whole King of Queens and Queen of Queens line, which is actually very largely misinterpreted from Chanel's letter. If you'd like to know what Chanel's letter actually means, I would suggest going and talking to her about it yourself. She has more context. She has more things that put it into context, and she knows much more about the letter than Washington does. Washington is not correct in his interpretation, and I'm not going to tell him, and I'm not going to sit here and be blind to the fact that he doesn't know what he's talking about. I know that he is influencing people to think that that is what this letter means. Meanwhile, he has less context than Chanel does, yet insists he knows more. He insists that Chanel's interpretation is all wrong, even though he has less of the context. Now to the poster who posted this. I'd like to ask you to pray on things instead of disbelieving anything Washington has to say. Washington really has no discernment whatsoever. He does not understand the letter, but he thinks he does. Punishing Chanel for an interpretation that she does not even agree with won't help anybody here. It won't help anybody. Thirdly, they are condemning Chanel for her use of gematria and the Jewish cipher. But in reality, there are others in the Mandela Effect community who do use gematria, and no one really cares. They only care whenever Chanel does it. An example of this would be Changing Matrix. She uses gematria and has said so, and nobody bats an eye. But there is a piece of hypocrisy here. Harbinger of the Harvest used gematria in order to shun Chanel for using gematria, and everybody's cool with that. For some reason, they think that having that double standard there is perfectly acceptable. For the life of me, I cannot understand why they insist on having that double standard and behaving like it's acceptable to have it. I just don't understand. At the end of the day, the shunning of Chanel and Brandt don't actually appear to be genuinely for the reasons that keep getting stated. Instead, there's a whole lot of shady things going on here. They have double standards. They don't care if anybody but Chanel uses gematria. They don't care about any false prophets except for Chanel and Brandt. If I can prove that there is some other false prophet, they refuse to go deal with it. So it's not about false prophets. It's not about gematria. And it's not even about the letter, because they refuse to even hear Chanel out on her interpretation of the letter, and they punish her for their own interpretation, regardless of how wrong that interpretation is. So, if it's not about the letter, if it's not about the Gematria, if it's not about even them being false prophets, then it has to be about something else entirely. Something else that everybody's overlooking. I think even they themselves might be overlooking the truth here. I will see everybody in the next video. Thank you for watching.